3. In Unit 3, we are shifting gears for our final essay in which we're going to write a persuasive essay. So let's look at the ideas and details. We're going to look at the details and the concepts so that you can start to get comfortable with where we're going to go. So far, we've had readings in a lot of different areas, but they've touched on important societal issues. For instance, if you think about the De La Peña essay that we read, he talks about reading his first novel. This is about literacy. It's about education. What about Ernest Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants? One of the themes could be abortion. We are talking about relationships there. What if we look at the stereotypes that were in another story? There are so, in Judith Ortiz Cofer's essay, there are so many possibilities in what we've read so far. And we are going to look for a topic that inspires us. It could be a societal issue that we've read about, so you already have a resource, a source that you can use, or it could be a topic that personally interests you. So this is the tricky part. I could give you a topic, and then that's kind of handy. You don't really have to think about the topic. You tackle exploring the topic. But that can also be really boring. What if you don't really like that topic? I am trying to find that space between just making you do particular things and giving you the chance to explore things you're passionate about. So I give you that option to look at something we've been looking at, or to tackle something that you are personally interested in, so that you can find a topic of interest to you. So your task is to identify and narrow a social issue or problem and research a solution or a response to that problem. You're aiming to persuade your reader to recognize the validity of your solution. So for instance, you may say, hey, literacy rates are a problem. We want them to be 100. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we want them to be 100%. We want everyone to feel confident in their reading ability. That's the problem, right? That we aren't at 100%. So what could solutions to that look like? That's where my research comes in. I start to research and I find solutions people have started with, things that are working, things that aren't working. And I start to say, you know what, out of all of these, I think these are our 3 best bets for increasing literacy rates. So that's what we're looking at. We're picking a problem, an idea, we're finding a problem, and then we are proposing solutions. And we want people to be on our side with it. So let's look at the basics first. We are heading up. We want 7+ pages. That doesn't include the works cited page, but we want 7 pages minimum for this assignment, because we're preparing for all your other courses at San Juan College and any university you transfer to. We also want 5+ academic sources. So you are going to need quotes from 5 separate resources. 2 of those resources must be found in the San Juan College Library Catalog or database. This is something that everyone needs to know how to do coming out of English 1110, but it's also something everyone at every college should know how to do. So I want to be with you in this process so that you can feel confident and ready and able as you head into future classes. So when you get to a class and they're like, hey, write about this, persuade me about the topic, you'll say, oh, I already did that. I did that in a class. I know how to write a persuasive essay. I know how to find those academic resources. That's the goal. So at every point, if you are stressed or worried or uncomfortable with something, I want you reaching out and asking questions. And of course, we're practicing MLA formatting. To be part of a works cited page, a source must be quoted. So putting those 5 resources on our works cited page means we have 5+ quotes. That means we have a quote from every single resource. So I'm going to skip the outline really quick because it is covering sort of the main concepts. Well, we'll go back. We'll stay with it. We're using, for this example, the 5-paragraph paper format. When you think about the 5-sentence paragraph that we talked about previously, the idea is that it's super adaptable. I could write a sentence with 5 words. I could write a paragraph with 5 sentences. I could write 5 pages of work. I could write 5 chapters. I could write 5 books using this kind of format where it's buildable, it's plug and play. each of these Roman numerals, like the introduction, it could be a paragraph, one, or it could be 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs. Any of these ideas are expandable and shrinkable. They can be 1 paragraph or they can be more. And that is why I want to explore this kind of concept with you, because I want to give you that building block that's really adaptable and malleable so that you can make it into anything you need. So I've given you some basic ideas for each one. And I have added this opposition element here for the 5th section in this example, but it's not something we're always going to include, so I want to go explore these parts. So the concepts. When we're looking at a paper in our class, we're not just saying, oh, be busy, write a paper for your English teacher. We're saying, what are you going to do in history class when you need to write a short answer response that looks like a 3-paragraph essay? What are you going to do in science when you need to write a report about how a particular chemical is interacting with another one? All of these things work together the same way that everything we do in class works together. We didn't just do an assignment in Unit 2, Week 2. We are looking at these ideas and saying, how do I make them work for all the things I want to tackle? So as we tackle Unit 3, we are going to be turning every assignment into something that builds into our paper. We are going to bit by bit, block by block, build that paper and those ideas. It gives you the chance to work on them. It gives me the chance to interact with them and give you support. So first things first, we want to show what that problem is and why we care about it. In the sample paper I've given you, the person gives a very personal account of why they're writing about that topic. I want to make sure you understand that that's a sample paper. It's an example of what you could do. You may want to talk about a topic in terms of yourself and your personal experience. You may not want to talk about it in terms of your personal experience. So for instance, the literacy example. Literacy is super important to me, but I don't actually have a personal story of why that matters so much. It's an idea, it's a concept that's really important to me in terms of people having opportunities and being able to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And so I don't have some amazing personal story about it. So I don't have a sample to show you. But in my research on that topic, I could find personal stories where people talk about, for instance, what it takes to move through society without literacy. How do you figure out what can of soup to buy if you can't read the labels? What does that look like? And I could give an example that's not personal, but that I am reading about and I am sharing with everyone else to get them on board. So we first start out by saying, this is the problem, this is what I want to look about it at, and this is why it matters to me or to the world around me. And we want those specific examples, like that can of soup, because we want everyone to really process not just the overarching idea, but what exactly makes it an important concept. Next, what is a major cause of that problem? Maybe there isn't. We have if applicable here, because maybe there isn't like a clear, defined reason, but we want to start looking for that. What's a major cause and what are major consequences if that problem continues to go forward? That gives us a chance to start to center our argument. We're giving it context. It didn't just appear out of thin air. Literacy and illiteracy didn't just appear. They are things that are part of any society. And so we want to say, in terms of American society, perhaps New Mexican society, what does this mean? And how is that working? Then we want some solutions. Notice that we're saying they address the major consequences, and then we're saying help alleviate. We're not necessarily going to come up with the solution, but we're coming up with solutions, ideas, responses, so that we aren't just out there alone. What if we come up with, for instance, in the literacy example, something that we can all do to help others around us? What if we come up with something that we can do as a community? What if we come up with something we can do as a state, as a country? What if we have layers to alleviating that problem? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for all the potential possibilities. And maybe there are 10 options. And obviously we can't write about everything. So maybe you pick your top 4 and you write about those. finally, this opposition idea before we get to our conclusion. The opposition or objections or limitations are part of any argument. We don't always include this. If you think about the Hemingway essay we've been working on in Unit 2, I presented 4 possible articles talking about different concepts. Even if we pick just one, say we pick symbolism, if I wanted to tackle every moment of symbolism in that story, I would end up with a paper that goes on and on and on and on and on. And I don't want to do that. I don't have the time or space for that. So I have to pick. I have to narrow it down to something that I can make an argument about in that set number of pages. So I don't always talk about it. Like I may say, I'm going to talk about these 3 symbols, and then I go on with life. But I may say, yes, I'm going to talk about these 3 symbols, and I recognize that there is a 4th symbol that lots of people do talk about, or an important one, but I'm not going to talk about it. And that's really what we're doing here. What we write and what we share is about communication. It's about getting dialogue and conversation going so that people are growing and engaging with concepts. So when we share what we've picked as a major issue, major consequences, and possible solutions, we may find that there is a solution we don't want to talk about or a consequence that we don't want to talk about. This is our chance to say, yes, I see you, I hear you, but I'm correct in looking at these elements. I know that there's more out there. I'm acknowledging that there is more out there that exists, but I'm not going to fully talk about it. I may give a reason, like I'm not going to talk about it because, but most likely I'm not. Because that's a whole paper, isn't it? I'm not going to talk about X because, and then because leads me down a very long path. So instead we're just saying, hey, there are other arguments out there, and I get that they're there, I see them, but I'm not going to talk about them. Like I'm correct in looking at ABC instead of XYZ. And in that conclusion, I gave you lots of parts here: signal a closing, thesis restatement, summarizing. But I want you to think about the envelope pattern, that we start off by telling people what we're going to tell them. I'm going to talk about literacy. I'm going to talk about literacy rates being weak and that I want them to be 100%. Then I'm going to tell them in the main body, I'm going to give lots of resources and solutions and points and key ideas. And then I'm going to say, I told you about literacy, and this is what I want you to do about that knowledge that you've now gained. Finally, that works cited page is so important because we are practicing learning about the web because lots of great resources are online, but how do we solve that? How do we get through that space of all of the stuff online and narrowing it down to what's good and solid? That's tricky, so we are practicing together. But we also want to be comfortable with the library. So because I want you in both of those spaces, we're looking for resources from both. And of course, there is time and opportunity for me to go to the library with you, and I'm hoping we can set up some times where people can drop in and we can go to the library and look up topics. So head out there and start this exploration. Realize that this paper is not being written in a day, it's being written in 5 weeks, and that we are working on it bit by bit, part by part, as we learn to write the kind of paper that we're going to write for lots of different courses as we go forward.